Important for consideration.
The world population number of Earth is consistently wrongly indicated by terrestrial statisticians, because they do not have worldwide exact population data, and they also do not have the possibility for exact electronic registration possibilities, but only numerical pro forma assumptions. According to the data of the Plejarens, who have a highly technical system of control of the registration of persons up to a single person, they can show a very exact result of the current increase of the total Earth population and its registration. Thus, according to their exact registrations, every year about 15 to 35 million more human beings populate the Earth than the erroneous earthly illusory or estimated calculations show. During the current year, the Plejarens regularly register, over the course of the 365 days from 0.0 o'clock beginning yearly on the 1st of January up to year-end 24.0 o'clock on the 31st of December, 24 hours daily, worldwide up to the most remote corners of the Earth, of the primeval forests, mountains, steppes, moors and swamps, tundras and deserts and so on. Every single new birth as well as every death thus results an absolutely exact result of the annual earthly total population up to the individual and last born or last deceased human being. The result in this respect was at 24.0 o'clock at the end of the last year, on December 31, 2020, exactly 9,163,818 equals, that is to say 9,163,081,008 humankind of Earth. The earthly statistics show an annual world population increase of about 70 to 80 million, and thus much less than corresponds to reality and truth. The annual growth rate of the earthly population, that is to say overpopulation, namely amounts, according to extremely exact Plejaren's data and their daily control records, also for the last year in relation to the total population of the Earth, many millions more than earthly statistics falsely claim.
From the autobiography of Billy.
Of course, Billy did not only stay in the Ashoka ashram during his stay in India in 1964, but he also moved around in the nearer and wider surroundings of the ashram, often also with the help and in company of Asket, as various records prove, which he made in India shortly one after another. Thus a story of him is preserved, which he wrote down on June 25, 1964 in Madras, and which he had lived shortly before, Adventures of a Globetrotter, page 161, and in which he also had profound thoughts about the conditions in India.
Mystery experiential thoughts.
11:00 p.m. Indian time. Moon and stars glitter clearly from the night sky and cast a faint light over the dark land. India, land of thousands of dreams, land of beauty, peace and happiness, India. But what does the harsh reality look like in this land that is a dreamland of many thousands, the land of 1,000 wonders? Together with Miss Rogers, the boss of the animal's friend, we roll along the Gurgaon road to Mehrala, chatting comfortably in our little friend of the animal's Fiat vehicle. In the back of the car sits Mr. Prem Singh, the first lackey of our staff. Unfortunately, he only speaks Hindi, and so we have some difficulties with our communication, because my command of Hindi is very poor. Miss Rogers therefore translates word for word from English into the language of the Hindus, which she masters perfectly, since she was born in India and also grew up here. We are chatting comfortably when suddenly in the headlights of our car a hunched figure appears, lying in the middle of the road and writhing convulsively. It seems to be a man lying there, old and withered like 100-year-old oak. Hard the brake shoes grip and bring the car to a stop. We get out and quickly approach the figure lying there. It howls for mercy and cries for bread. Hunger, damn hunger has got this piece of human being, which lies here on the road, and the soul screams out the throat. In addition, only his upper body is dressed with a torn scrap of cloth, and his emaciated, naked abdomen offers itself as a starved skeleton to our eyes. Now we see the figure more closely, a woman, half-starved and closer to death than to life. We cannot tell from her face, from her head or otherwise from the upper part of her body that it is a woman, for the head is clean-shaven, and the face is crisscrossed with so many deep wrinkles and the body so emaciated that it could just as well be a man. Only the abdomen, the genital area, brings us clarity about whose sex the figure is. Silently, without saying a word or asking a question, together we take the half-starved woman to the car and gently lie her down on the back seat. There will still be time enough in the morning to ask and speak. Now first the sad remnant of a human being must be brought to our mission and gently feed. That is now the most important thing. 3 miles we still have to go to the mission, then we move the woman into a bed and feed her very carefully with some power broth. There is nothing more we can do now, because no doctor will be found at night to drive out here. It is already a miracle during the day if one of the Indian doctors gets lost here, except for our veterinarian Dr. Sharma. So we lay down to rest and want to see more the next morning. The first thing I do on this new morning is of course to go to the old woman. But when I arrive at her bedside, I can only see that she had died during the night. Prem Singh, who is also standing at the bedside and had been watching all night, makes it clear to me by gestures that the woman had said a few things to him shortly before her death. So I was just about to go and see Miss Rodgers so that she could translate Prem's knowledge from Hindi into English, when she came in the door. A quick glance was enough for her to see what had happened. She crosses herself 3 times, because it is so in her beliefs, then translates Prem Singh's words to me. 2 weeks ago, the 47-year-old woman left her home in Calcutta because her husband, a railroad worker, simply threw her out on the street because he was marrying a younger woman. Since then, the woman, disowned by her husband, wandered around India and eventually arrived here by car stop, 1,200 miles away. The previous night she collapsed from hunger on Gurgaon Road, where we found her half dead. However, our help came much too late, because during the night she exchanged her life on earth with that of Nirvana. Unfortunately, this is not just a single case of this kind, because several times we have seen human beings gathered on the streets under similar circumstances, who died of hunger or disease a short time later. A dead man of 72 years was lying on the road to Madras, South India, was renamed Chennai in 1996, only a few weeks ago, and only 3.5 hours later, when we came back on the same road, the dead man was taken away, and also only at our instigation, when we went to the city police inspector and raised a ruckus. India, the land of 1,000 wonders and for many thousands the land of dreams. But what does the reality look like? Ugly, brutal, inhuman. The majority of the masses are absolutely not interested in their next ones, even more terrible than in civilized countries. But why is that? Do they have the same motives as the civilized human beings? No. In India it is the belief, the religion. The bulk of the masses has mostly only one point of interest, the religion Sanskrit. For many human beings, the consciousness-based horizon reaches just to the partial knowledge of the Sanskrit religion, and then blocks all their science. They are not able to tear themselves out of the monotony of their daily life and to take even the smallest interest in their next ones. Thus, one can quietly die and croak next to the other without anyone taking notice. India, the country of religions, where many religious believers are not friendly to other religious believers. Thus, a Christian Indian told me, every single religion can be calmly put into a certain catchword, into a catchword that reveals the special characteristic of each of the individual religions. To give an example, take Buddhism, which can be described as follows. In the case of this kind of religion, it may be safely said that the phrase, "Take care only of yourself," is the most apt designation. Regarding the Sikh religion, he explained to me, in the Sikh religion, The phrase, kill your next ones if you can gain an advantage for yourself, is excellent. Members of this sect are also the only ones allowed, without any license, to carry multiple weapons such as a large knife as well as a handgun, while anyone who does not belong to this sect is inevitably shipped off to the nearest jail if a large knife or handgun is found on him or her. The Parsis have been described to me by Buddhists, Hindus and Christians as necrophiliacs because, according to Parsi custom, corpses are thrown into the towers of silence instead of being buried or cremated. By Sikhs, Christians, Parsis and Buddhists, Hindus have been called fanatics and idolaters to say the least. So it goes on, religion for religion, and the one religion's religious believers insult the other religion's religious believers. However, all of the above has nothing to do with those human beings who are real human beings and are also very numerous in India, human beings who really strive to be human beings. These human beings are the ones who live the being human in the real and true sense, not according to the religions of India, but out of their own cognition of the creational truth. And they are human beings who do not scold those who believe otherwise. Human beings who exist not only in India but also in all other countries of earth and in all belief orientations. They are the ones who do not perform miracles, but great works in the sense of the true being human. And they have only one thing in common with the common people or the high priests of the most diverse religious members, who live, think, feel and act only for their own beliefs and for their own good alone. They are beings of the humankind, but their being human makes them human beings who are real human beings. They live, work and die for their being human, because they know first of all about the truth about life and about the creational laws and recommendations, which they strive to fulfill. Facts, which are absent from the common people, because they do not strive in any kind and wise for the effective truth of creational and natural form.
India, the wonderland of the dreamers. All their lives these dreamers strive to be able to see India at least once in their life. But what do they see when they one day are able to travel the country? Nothing, because they are only travelers. Travelers who travel and see only what they want to see. And what the government does not want them to see, they will not see, because they are just tourists, travelers. Even thousands and thousands of professionals who are sent to India by their companies for certain work and as country representatives, and so on, they do not get to know the people and the country in its reality, because they do not see behind the scenes, even if they live or have lived in the country for years. But why is that? Quite simply, they all can never get out of their skin and feel like an Indian among Indians. So they will always be strangers in the country, even if they have lived 100 years in the country, but not directly with the people. Those, however, who feel themselves as Indians and can live in the direct area of the natives and thus see behind the scenes, these remain silent and let the dreamers dream. They let them dream, because they would be accused of being liars or, to put it mildly, simply untruthful. And when the dreamers then see the country and find nothing of what they were told and explained, then the narrator is already convicted as a liar. But they do not consider that it is entirely their own fault, because they are and remain in the country only as travelers, strangers, even if they have worked there for years. In addition, there is the foreign advertising and the sensationalism of all countries. So piece after piece falls into place, and the real connoisseur of the country is accused of being a liar, although they speak the full truth. Well, I myself have lived in India for a long time, not as an ordinary worker, not as a high employee, and not as a traveler or tourist, because I have lived in India as an Indian. I was at home with the dirtiest and the lowest caste as I was with the highest caste. Their life and their kind of life I have known directly, and therefore I may well form a free judgment. I know the noble doings of the upper caste just as well as the dirty spoon and the plate of the very poor, staring from flies and other dirt. But I also know the dirty, sore and torn hands of the poorest of the poor, who are treated like scum by the castes who believe themselves to be better. The poorest who have no other tool for eating than their hands, which are terribly disfigured by eczema and chapping. The dirt-starved hair of the poorest, in which potatoes would grow with a guarantee, if some were planted in it, are just as familiar to me as the frippery of the richest brats, who like to play big city lady, but do not consider that their consciousness-based horizon is frighteningly nearly limited. But in this respect, the same kind of man is no exception, because he is one of them. The exceptions, those who do not have only a hard stone as a head, they separate themselves and form their own clan, if also not officially, then nevertheless sense-wise. This is the land of dreamers, and the land of those who dream of it as the wonderland, because they do not know the hard and brutal reality and only move in layers where the hard reality does not become obvious. The brutal reality is also not revealed by journalism, because the rule requires that only things to which they have official access can be shown by journalists, while the effective reality is denied to them. However, let us return to religion, in the oscarted forms of Christianity and Islam, Buddhism, Judaism and Hinduism and all the thousands of religious sects of all kinds that have arisen from them or from other sources. Such stubbornness and such fanaticism prevail in some cases that even an ignorant monkey would tear his hair out if he saw them. For example, an elderly Indian woman, a Hindu by profession, when I asked her why she was drinking the dirty water in which some watercows had just bathed and dropped their excrement, replied, "Sir," she said, "sir, this water is not dirty because it was a sacred cow that bathed in it." Why are we still asking about the mentality of the common believer here, when we get answers like this to our questions? Has this really still something to do with religion, or is this only fanaticism, which is to be affirmed surely without question 100%? Fanaticism and dumbing down of the people in the highest degree, thousandfold stirred up by fanatical and money-greedy priests, parsons, bigwigs, rabbis, monks, gurus, masters and popes and the like. But it is to be mentioned here once again that the real human beings have not the least to do with this whole matter, because they are the ones from whom the broad masses practically really learn to live, by teaching the bulk of the truth of life, because the broad masses lack the understanding and the cognition that only the true being human makes the human being to a real human being, a truthful human being, a knowing one, and a fulfiller of the creational natural laws and recommendations. This is the part of India, the land of 1,000 wonders and beauties. Madras, June 25, 1964.
From my life, thoughts.
As a still very young human being, barely having outgrown my childhood shows, I stepped out into the big world and onto the stage of life, driven by restlessness and wanderlust. Although I was very lively, agile, full of interest in all and everything, I did not have a very warm blood that would have made me seedy and a hot temper. Nor did any germs of violent passions grow in me. Rather, there were things hidden in me that aspired to love, peace, freedom, harmony, knowledge and wisdom, as well as to great adventures, of which I then encountered not a few throughout my life. In the upbringing of my parents, I had not been pampered and thus found in their guidance likewise good advice, directions and behavioral instructions, as also through my fatherly friends Pastor Zimmerman, the Plejaren Svahoff and the teachers Karl Greff and Gustav Lehmann in my hometown of Bullock/Canton of Zurich. So I learned early on to pay great attention to all things, to respect life, human beings, animals and plants, to show them all due love and dignity and to be helpful to them. From this, however, came the teaching and cognition that not only must all that is good and sublime be appreciated, but that due consideration must be shown to human beings and all life. But the cognition also went, that among the simple people of my homeland, Switzerland, a certain sycophantic nature was just as unwelcome as flattery and dissimulation. So I acquired a trait that satisfied this fact, but I also had to learn the mode of behavior of being able to cultivate a certain suppleness, which I needed when I moved in socially higher circles. This mode of behavior was especially required when I came into contact with strangers or when I moved in circles that ranged from the simple rich and aristocrats up to state powers and kings and emperors. Special modes of behavior were required with despotic mighty men and states, for the wrong behavior would inevitably have led to even great personal terribleness. In order to go through the teaching of the life, no theoretical instruction helps, because always the practice is demanded, and only from it the practical experiences and the actual experience emerge. Nor can any success in worldly wisdom be attained by pure theory, for that too is all based on lived practice. Therefore, if one is not to run the risk of being considered a fool, then one must always do one's best in one's own experience and practical experiences. And I had the luck to learn these lessons, but it must be said that I did not get them cheaply, but had to work hard for them. Through its very own experiencing and living, they became to the most healing effects in me and imprinted themselves deeply in me. I remember an incident, an event in India, when I was sitting at the gate of the wall entrance to the Ashoka Ashram in Mehrauli in the summer of 1964 and pondering. Not far from me sat a very aged Buddhist monk, a dignified old man, who eyed me with interest. As I was sitting there alone, he suddenly rose and approached me to have a conversation. Honored, I rose and answered him. We talked about various things of which I had some knowledge, and he was very pleased with all that I told him. But then the moment came when we disagreed on certain religious matters. Consequently, he became more and more unfriendly and condescending. Clearly, he was annoyed that he did not understand what I was trying to explain to him. This led me stupidly to make side trips in the conversation and to interweave different extremes, in which case I could not resist becoming a little vicious and sarcastic in the end. In the process, I finally slipped in the gross imprudence of saying that even a monk does not possess absolute wisdom and consequently still has to learn. This made the dignified one look at me very seriously and without another word go back to his place, where he sat down again on the stone on which he had been sitting before. Now, however, he turned aside and did not dignify me with another glance. His behavior made me feel the full force of his reprimand, and I was so ashamed of my careless words that I begged the aged monk's pardon. But this did not diminish his condescension, and he spurned the apology. Shortly thereafter he rose with difficulty from his perch and left the place, after which I never saw him again. Well, the whole thing was a hard lesson, emanating from a careless imprudence in conversation. At that time I was sure that my words were right, and even today I have to see it that way, but with the truth that I hurt a human being who could not understand it. And today I know with certainty that never shall a human being be hurt with words just because he or she does not understand the truth. The duty in such a case must be to remain silent or to find explanations through appropriate paraphrases that are not hurtful. Through my experience with the dignified man I became conscious that never too much and never too little may be done, and that in the frame of that which is right, what counts is only what can be represented consistently, specifically and towards the fellow human beings without disadvantage. Only in this way does it not become apparent that a folly is committed or another one is to be made good. Consequently, there must be fundamental planning, both in action and in the use of words, so as not to cause things that are not intended and that do not cause contradictions. Thus, caution is required, but also no carelessness shall prevail and no too open a word shall be spoken, because otherwise damage will be caused by it. The human being should have such fine manners that he or she can move with it in every society and in all circles. But his or her behavior should not be artificial, otherwise the trust of the human beings will be lost, no matter which social class they belong to. The teaching of the life also taught me that too much suppleness is extremely harmful, especially with regard to independence and dignity, but also with regard to fellow human beings, before whom prestige and respect are lost. Today I myself have come to old age, like the dignified monk in India, for the years have flown by, and now that I am old, have gotten to know human beings, and the experiences and practical experiences have opened my eyes and made me cautious. Perhaps I have learned the art of being able to stand by my fellow human beings with good advice. In old age one has no more useless time to waste, which one should not do also in the younger and middle years and the whole life long. Consequently, what shall be done is still to be done, namely to present the way for the human beings to the teaching of the life, so that they learn, experience, and live, in order to become thereby truly human and to attain love, peace, freedom, harmony, knowledge, and wisdom. And only when all these values become inherent to the human being, then will he or she also be a real human being. But being human in the real and true sense means to love the next ones as oneself, to get rid of murder and manslaughter, of hatred, jealousy, capital punishment and war, as well as of all other terrible things, and also to respect one's fellow human beings as human beings. Even the worst and most austere state powers, murderers and criminals of humanity, and so on, are human beings who deserve respect as human beings, even if they deserve the strictest punishments for their crimes and as which, however, must never be directed against life and limb. The punishment must be for criminality, crimes and and so on, but it must correspond to a true humanity and must not end in hatred, revenge and retaliation. Every human being has a right to his or her life, even if he himself/she herself kills and murders. Consequently, only punitive measures that protect life and limb may be taken and carried out, which also protect criminals from hatred, revenge and retaliation, but bring them to the fair punishment through appropriate humane measures. Billy,